And Somaya, welcome first of all. The world is unsuccessful. Israel violates humanitarian law and commits war crimes. One of them is targeting journalism. There are lots of. And Israel's was not punished. This is by far, I think, the most challenging aspects we face of. What can we do for journalist safety in conflict zones?
Okay, thank you for inviting me to speak during one of the most painful moments in the history of journalism. For over 19, most probably 20 months now, the Gaza Strip has been suffering a systematic genocide, one that has not even spared hospitals or schools, not families, homes where children are sleeping, and of course journalists. Journalists who are being killed live on air by Israeli weapons in front of the eyes of the world. No one can stop that for almost 2 years now. So far, more than 220 Palestinian journalists have been killed, making this the deadliest war for journalists in the modern history. Every day, one of my colleagues, one of them falls, and another brave colleague rises from behind to pick up the microphone and the camera to continue the mission. They work without proper protective gear. What remains is torn and useless. The word press, my dear, now is not protective. It's instead making them the target. It's danger for them, the word press now. And yet these young journalists have redefined journalism. It's no longer a profession or a neutrality or the luxury of human act, the luxury of delivering information. It has become a human act of resistance. It's a daily struggle to defend a people being slaughtered, starved, and besieged, deprived even of their right to speak, to be heard. We, as a TRT team, have been on the ground since day one. From the first day, I'm proud myself to say that I traveled from Istanbul on October 7th, and I take pride also in my colleagues who continue to report from the field with unshakable hands, with unshakable courage and commitment. I honor my colleague Mustafa Abu Thuraya, who was killed on the ground of Gaza during this horrific genocide. I'm proud of my dear friend Sami Shhada, who lost his leg while he was reporting live online alongside with the correspondent of TRT Arabi, Sami Barhoum. In the face of all this, we must ask ourselves, how can anyone in the world describe themselves as journalists, as a human activist, or even a human being, keeping himself silent in front of this genocide? We as Palestinians, we don't ask people, we are not asking the world to support us or stand with us with weapons, but with truth. The international press processes powerful platforms, millions-dollar cameras, and global reach, while Gaza's journalists have only worn out blue vests, which they have turned into symbolic shields against propaganda and narrative distortion. In this war, we've witnessed how Palestinian journalists broke the narrative siege. We've also seen how some activists and members of the international press raised the bar. They took the lead in the media battle, not just by reporting the massacres, but by tearing apart the distorted image of the Palestinian resistance.
Somaya.
Too often, yes.
take a break because I will ask you another questions, more than one. Foreign media, for example, couldn't get into Gaza, and you are faced what's happened in Gaza. Could you a little bit try to recognize or maybe remember what was the responsibility when were you in there?
Okay, I am one of that city's son and daughters. I have been born in Gaza. It's my hometown. It's where I belong. Because of that, I headed in October 7th from Istanbul to Gaza directly to be there. I know it's very dangerous, especially for a mother who have 2 kids, to let them here in Istanbul and go there. You know that there is no safe places in Gaza. They ask you to go to Al-Mawasi at the west of Khan Yunis, at the south of Gaza Strip, and they targeted even tents there. We are talking about hundreds, if not thousands, of people who were killed in such safe places. Our colleague, we are talking about 220. It's not a number. They have stories, they have beloved ones, they have their families, and to be face to face by your camera in front in attack. For example, my team, when I was working there, 2 of my friends were Sami Barhoum and Sami Shhada. Both of them were reporting from a Nusayrat camp while they were targeted by an Israeli tank. Because of that, Sami Shhada lost her leg.
And he will continue to be voice of Gaza.
Yeah, he's continuing. He said that the souls of our martyred or our friends who passed away give us the responsibility to continue this, to deliver. So the Palestinian journalists nowadays redefine the journalism as a revolutionary work. It's not only something regarding to their country or to the human or to it's a revolutionary work just to face the tank, to face the F-16, the destruction with your camera and your microphone.
Yes, Mücahit Aydemir also is in here via online. And Mücahit, we are working together more than 1.5 years, maybe 2. And describe the journalist struggle you faced and what's your motivation to make news?
Hi everyone, good afternoon, dear hosts of the Asia Pacific Broadcasting Union and my fellow guests and my fellow colleagues.
Değerli katılımcılar ve
Well, when we are speaking about Israel and Palestine, Palestinian occupied Palestine, indeed the struggles are quite leveled, we can say. As a journalist working in challenging environments here, we have been facing obstacles in the line of duty, like including physical assaults, arrest, and interference from occupation forces, as well as illegal Jewish settlers in the case of East Jerusalem or in the occupied West Bank as well. So these experiences, of course, have been mostly unsettling, and which shows also the risks that is inherent in pursuing truth under this kind of adversarial conditions. So I have been working and reporting from the ground since based in East Jerusalem since more than 3 years now in Palestine, which mostly evoked so far for me, a mix of distress, but at the same time, a resilience and unwavering commitment to our job to raise the voices that might otherwise be silenced. And in here, of course, we are speaking about what millions of Palestinian people are going through. And indeed, when we, Sezen, you asked about struggle, when we speak about struggle, of course, we are living in different sorts of reality when we are saying Palestine, because there is a Gaza, which a genocide is being unfolded for 594 days, almost 20 months, as my colleague Sumaya actually briefly described. And on the other hand, we have occupied East Jerusalem and the West Bank, which has a different reality. Of course, we cannot compare our struggle as journal field reporters. What we are experiencing cannot be compared at all. What our dear colleagues and fellow journalists are facing in Gaza right now. Just as Sumaya said, like it's just not just profession for them, but they are living all these horrors of these genocides and carnages that goes on every single day in Gaza Strip. So we lost our colleagues there, and they are still, so many of them are enduring unimaginable pain and struggle every single moment, and they are still continuing doing their reporting and their profession as much as possible under these circumstances that we cannot even imagine from our statue right now. So I indeed want to also use this platform to extend my solidarity for all our colleagues there in Gaza, and I also want to express my condolences for our colleagues who lost their lives during when they were doing their job there, especially like Muntasir As-Sawab, who was my fellow camera person. We worked closely together, and he lost his life. Unfortunately, he bled to death during an Israeli attack. And may Allah grant him eternal peace and mercy on his soul. So, as I mentioned, like struggles here, indeed, before and 7th of October, I can briefly say that is entirely different for us as foreign correspondents here. Like
could
for
you open
Palestinian
this a little bit? What's the differences after October 7?
Yes, indeed. Like before October 7th, I can say that there was a big difference between being a Palestinian, local journalists in Palestine, and a foreign correspondent here. So for Palestinian journalists, it has always been an issue to perform their journalistic duties. But for us, for foreigners, it was slightly more easier to some extent and in certain contexts. But after the 7th of October, regardless of your nationality, as long as you are being in locations that has anything to do with raising the voice of oppressed Palestinian people, you are being targeted. Regardless if you are Palestinian or foreigner, it doesn't matter. So we have constantly been abused during our work, either, for instance, house demolitions, arbitrary arrests, or Israeli occupation forces raids in refugee camps across the West Bank, and incidents, and in all other similar incidents, or like which happens almost on every week on Fridays when we are nearby Al-Aqsa filming the Friday prayer, when thousands of Palestinian people are rushing to Al-Aqsa Mosque, the second holiest temple, holiest place in Islam. Thousands of Palestinian people are suffering and completely arbitrary oppression by the Israeli occupation forces at the gates of Al-Aqsa Mosque. So when we are filming there, we are constantly facing intervention and sometimes physical violence by the Israeli occupation forces. So indeed, after the 7th of October, and I heard this from many actually Israeli so-called security forces, when we had to come to face, they told us like it's not anymore like in the past. So they kind of Israeli regime, if we slightly know the nature of this regime, we know that Israel always wants to show its image in the international arena as a democratic state, whereas we very well know here, as when it comes to Jewish people, and Palestinian people, it's an entirely apartheid regime. And once you want to make this truth visible, then you are being targeted very easily. There's no anymore the most democratic country of the Middle East. There is no more the most moral army in the world. So these hasbara, which is called like a propaganda, Israeli propaganda narrative doesn't work anymore when you are a journalist working in the field.
Mücahit, I can't imagine what you did. And when we are talking, we are also watching your news on the screen right now. And I don't know, maybe you prefer to answer or not, but could you tell us, have you ever been targeted directly or indirectly?
Well, luckily so far, as I said, like we are not in Gaza, and we cannot even enter Gaza. Almost like 2 years now, and we have not been able to enter Gaza. So, indeed, about being targeted or like fatally, we haven't been exposed such direct fatal cases. As much as our colleagues are facing right now in Gaza. And Israel, of course, do not allow us to enter Gaza. This is the most important point, maybe, to speak about when we are talking about field journalism and journalism under fire, because those colleagues in Gaza are all alone. And international media, especially, like in different languages, their correspondents are not allowed inside Gaza by the prevention of Israeli regime. So we, on the other hand, as I said, like physically, of course, we have been assaulted in many cases, especially in the territory of the occupied Palestinian territories, when we are, for instance, following in Jenin refugee camp, the Israeli destruction there. So often there have been incidents that we had to protect ourselves from a direct threat. Exactly what happened, since we know what happened to our dear colleague Shireen Abu Aqileh, who has been reporting from Palestine for 25 years and who has been shot deliberately by an Israeli sniper in Jenin refugee camp when she was following the Israeli raid there. And so it is an example that how Israeli forces approaches to journalists especially in the West Bank and in East Jerusalem, I mean the occupied territories. So because of this, actually, being international journalists, if you are completely deaf to the suffering of Palestinians and you work from Tel Aviv or like from the Israeli side, that's totally fine. You will feel probably all comfort that you need. But when you are going to West Bank, for instance, you are potentially
Criminal.
sensitive to the oppression that Palestinian peoples are facing every single day. So once Israeli occupation forces or the illegal Israeli settlers realize that you are a journalist there, they will understand that you are there because you want to report the truth that goes on every single day there from all the settler terrorism and Israeli occupation forces atrocities there. They know that you are there to make a report about this because there is no other truth there, except atrocities that you see from Israel. So indeed, we have to be very careful, and we do that actually. Hence, whenever we travel to somewhere, we always take all the necessary precautions and we travel accordingly. We have all the necessary gears, of course, but still, the being targeted is not is always a possibility, of course.
Mücahit, my last question to you is, what's your expectation for future on journalism in conflict zones?
Well, regarding especially Palestine, which is hugely different than many other locations of the conflict around the world. Like I have been to Syria, I have been to Libya, and I lived in both of these countries, and I can say that Palestine is entirely different. So for my expectations as a reporting journalist from here is just that I would say that there's a huge burden on the international, so-called international community to take a necessary step to stop what's going on in here. So, and to humanize Palestinian lives in the first place. And then maybe we as journalists enjoy our freedom of working and reporting freely on the ground, but especially from Gaza. I think Gaza is much needed in that regard. This matter is much needed in Gaza, especially, I believe. So I hope that enough so far what has been going on all these months, and I hope that this would end as soon as possible, and I expect that Palestinian people, and especially in Gaza, being humanized, and they would have the narrative that they deserve to have their own presentation, or to represent themselves enough, and their stories should be told and they should be dignified. Their struggle should be honored in this regard. Thank you very much, Sezen.
Thank you, Mücahit. And Nizar Sadavi. Nizar, please, hello. Could you hear me or?
Yes, hello.
Nizar Sadavi is from TRT World. He will with us right now. Nizar, welcome again. Please share your.
Thank you.
Please share your first-hand experience as a Palestinian journalist was reporting from Gaza. You covered so many escalation, but you say you have never seen anything like this. Could you open this, and what's changed after October 7 for journalists?
That's a good question, and I don't believe the answer would be much different whether you're just a person or a journalist. In fact, if anything, everything changed after October 7 in terms of everything again. So it wasn't just the level or the scale of destruction we're talking about, but more or less the philosophy of war itself. This was no longer just a military operation. We've seen and covered many escalations in Gaza and other places, and we've never seen anything like this because, again, it wasn't just about the scale of destruction. It was about the fact that what was happening is annihilation of an entire people. And it was obvious from the very first moments in October 7. It was more or less as if the Third World War was coming to Gaza. So, yeah. And for me, on October 7, I realized that I wasn't just covering a story this time. I was actually trapped in it because I was a citizen after all. We realized that this was going to be absolutely different, and we realized that it was going to be devastating for everyone. No one could leave, nobody got in, nobody got out, and everything was risky. There was no safe place anywhere in Gaza. Homes became graves, hospitals became targets, and the lines between civilians and fighters, the line between journalists and combatants, were actually very vague. They were not clear, not to the Israeli side anyway. So again, the intensity and the disregard of life, I mean, this was all definitely unprecedented. We've never expected to see such a level of devastation, but unfortunately we did. And what makes it worse is the realization that it isn't over yet. I mean, October 7, 2023, here we are, May 22nd, 2025, and it's still ongoing.
And Nizar, what was the most memorable encounter you have faced as a journalist, and how did this event transform your journalism practice?
Every moment there counted. I'd be lying if I said that there was 1 or 2 or 10 particular moments or minutes that were so special, even in a negative way, because every moment there counts. Every moment was the worst, and every moment was the best. Survival is not a happy thing in Gaza, especially when you are in the field. And that's why it never ends, even if you leave Gaza. For me, I was there before it started. I continued the coverage there for TRT World until I think 6 months or more after the war. And I was one of the few journalists who were able to evacuate just days after Israel took control of Rafah crossing. But here we are, months later, I still feel every moment. I still talk to my friends there, my colleagues in Gaza, my second family, and I understand that there's nothing you could say to make it better. I mean, for us, because we know the situation and we know each other, you cannot just call your friend in Gaza who hasn't eaten in 2 or 3 days, for example, and still working, and ask, how's it going? I mean, it sounds really, in a very cruel way, a bad question to ask. And at the same time, you cannot not call them or not ask them. So sometimes we call each other and just we remain silent. So yeah, many moments. I remember, for example, the time my apartment got targeted. I remember the time my car was bombed. I remember the time my family had to evacuate before, of course, they bombed the house again. I remember the moment when, I mean, the moments when we had to evacuate from one place to another. Uh, so yeah, it was insane. I remember seeing children trapped under rubble, knowing that they're not going to be rescued because no one had the ability to do so. The civil defense, the ambulance crews, they did not have the proper equipment, and they still don't, by the way. That hasn't changed. In fact, if anything, it has gotten absolutely worse with time. So many people die directly from the Israeli rockets, missiles, and more die because of the fact that no one has the ability to help. No one from inside, and obviously no one from outside, because that's the thing. Palestinians there in Gaza, they are realizing that even though the world supports them, there's nothing they can do to stop Israel from doing what it does. That's the thing. So these memories, they haunt you, even if you're out, even if you're working from somewhere else. I'm talking to you from another field right now. I'm covering the news in Syria again. So yeah, like our dear Mujahid said, every uh, conflict zone is different. Palestine is absolutely different. And to be a war correspondent, I mean, that's not easy, but it's worse when you are part of the story. Because in Syria, yes, I understand the culture. I can even speak the same language somehow. I go here and there, I have connections. This isn't my first time here. But when you say Palestine, you're talking about your own people. For me, those were my own people. So I was trapped inside the story, working with death at my doorstep every minute, just like the other journalists who are still there, whether our colleagues from TRT network or from any other network, actually. In fact, that's a funny part, because after all, sometimes you can see that journalism becomes a business in the sense that channels compete. For example, let me put it this way. There are affiliations, of course, especially when it comes to Palestinians. I mean, there are affiliations. Some are Hamas, some are Fatah, some are Islamic Jihad. But in Gaza, because there's so much death and so much risk, and because the only way you can survive is to rely on your buddy, the one next to you, journalists there have become a real family. Nobody asks about affiliations anymore. They all sleep together. We used to share bread, if we ever find it, of course, together. And it was worse there were moments when you could just have breakfast with your colleagues, say goodbye, because you realize that at the end of the day, maybe when you regroup, some of you won't be there,
Yes.
would be killed. And that actually happened, not just with me, but mainly with every journalist in Gaza. So there hasn't been any Palestinian who didn't lose someone or something or both in Gaza. So again, bad memories that are always haunting me, not just me, anyone else. And yeah, you have the ability to sometimes, yes, you can work, you can say or pretend that you're moving on, because this is what we are trained to do. We're journalists. We go to different conflict zones. We keep reporting the news. But it doesn't mean that we are okay. Do we need help? Of course we do. Everyone does.
Let me
Thank you, Nizar.
make a comment here.
Of course.
About what, hi Nizar and hi Mujahid. Let me make a comment here. Nizar said that survivor is not a good thing in Gaza. I was evacuated from Gaza by TRT after 2 months of the war. Nizar's mother was with me, and it was a difficult journey even to evacuate. The survival itself is very difficult, and she was with me. Once we arrived Istanbul, she passed away at the same day, Nizar's mother. So even though I live here, but these are, as Nizar mentions, they are our people, our family there. And every time when you eat, when you sleep, when you do anything, you felt that survivor guilt. We are not okay. Even though the Palestinians out of Palestine, the Gazanians out of Gaza, we are not okay. And we're not sure if the world help is make it, but yes, we are not okay. No one is okay.
Yes, Somaya, but we are seeing the widespread opposition in Western societies to Israel actions and the support of Palestinians also. Is this the success of media outlets that broadcasts on the side of truth? What do you think about?
In the mental and legal context, we can say yes. But does it change anything on the ground? And for example, at the West Bank yesterday, a diplomatic team was targeted. They were shooted directly from many countries, many European countries. If we talk about the trucks of AIDS, the hundreds of trucks of or thousands in Rafah border and in the border for months now, not allowed to be entering Gaza. They maybe not good to use anymore. They are belong to UNRWA. Netanyahu is a criminal officially by a criminal, international court. But does it stop the killing in Gaza? Every day we hear about families that are deleted from they are still buried under their houses. That doesn't stop anything. I don't want to be pessimistic, but this is nothing can stop Israel till now. They are saying it in a loud voice. We will continue this genocide in Gaza. Gaza is out of service now. If you remember, months ago, everyone in the world was saying, all eyes on Rafah. Now Rafah, under the Israeli control now, no one can enter it, or any aid it doesn't allow to be entering Gaza. I can't say that may make a change. I can't see the light.
Thank you, Nizar, Somaya, and Mujahid. Despite all the challenges, the truth continues to be shared to the entire world. And you are part of it, and we are lucky to have you. Thank you again.
Thank you so much.
Thank you to all our... Thank you. to all our panelists and each of you who joined this important conversation. What we have heard today through facts, testimonials and live experience is not just a story of journalism under pressure, but it's a story of courage under fire, of professionals who persist even when the cost is unthinkable. Let us be clear, defending press freedom is not an abstract ideal. It's an urgent humanitarian responsibility. Every time we fail to speak up, we allow the darkness. We allow the darkness to spread. As we leave this room, let us carry forward not only pain of what's happening in Gaza and beyond, but also a sense of shared duty to protect journalists, to demand accountability, and uphold the right of every human being to truth, to dignity, and to a voice. Silencing journalism is not just an attack on the press, it's an attack of humanity itself. Let us not be silent in return. Thank you.